last time. This is a perfect size sand tray. The size of this is just right. There are bigger ones. They are expensive. The sand alone, a bag of sand, can run anywhere from $80 to $90 US. It's just white sand. I'm sorry? Yes. Janice must have gotten it. It is very expensive. So our natural response is, don't put that sand out on the floor. I bet the paper. Don't do that. Sweep it up and toss it. Don't put it back. No recycling sand. I don't recommend reusing it. Why might it not be a good idea to reuse the sand? The children have infection. Yes, kids have their hands in the sand. Most often, kids will use, if you've got little people, they are good to stand up in the sand. Animals, most any kind of animal kids will play with. Kids who've been traumatized will use anything to tell their story. They may use people if people are available. Oh, bless you. Bless whoever did it. Thank you. They will, kids who've been traumatized, especially sexual abuse, will play with almost anything to tell their story. One thing that many people will have are rocks. I have seen little girls, especially, not boys. Boys will throw them. Sure, you can. Little girls use different colored rocks. You want to have them in different types of colors. And they will use different colored rocks even to tell their story. One of the things that's important in sand trays, I tossed on the floor. One of the things that's important in sand trays is to not to try to interpret what the child is telling you. Let the child tell you their story. Oh, what is that blue rock doing? Not a rock, it's Mommy. Oh, what is Mommy doing? Oh, I wonder why that yellow rock is over there. That's because she's been bad. Let the child tell you his or her story. Really important. Thank you very much. So I've had on occasions where kids have put their rocks in certain places in the sand, and just ask them, oh, why is that one way over there? And let the child tell you their story, especially with trauma. Kids who've been any kind of trauma, not just the sexual abuse. But don't assume because a little boy pulls out a fire truck and plays with it either in the sand or on the ground. More often they tell their stories in the sand. Don't assume, oh, Dr. Macklin said that he's probably seen a fire. I will hit you with a wet noodle. So let the kids tell you their story. That's including when they're playing in the sandbox or outside the sandbox. One thing that's not in here are puppets. Puppets are great toys to have because kids talk through the puppet. What you don't want to do is if I've got a lion on this hand and a bear on this hand, and the child has kangaroo. And the lion and the bear are talking to the kangaroo. And then all of a sudden, Dr. Vicky says, well, Janice, why did you do that? Janice will pull into herself, drop the puppet, and go do something else. Because I've made it about Janice and not about the puppet. Kids need to keep it where they are removed when they're playing and telling their story. Just remember that. If the child says to you, I am going to do this, and they're using a puppet, don't assume that the I is the child. It most likely is, but you don't want to interact. Say, oh, what is your name? And let the child tell you their name. It might be that child's name. More often than not, it's a friend's name that they use, somebody that they know. They'll tell you. Yes. Oh, y'all are great. Oh my goodness, y'all are just wonderful. So the other thing I wanted to say, if you look around the room, they've done a really good job. Myself and Mary, who's over at Metro, sent Dr. Biles a list of toys that would be you'd want to have in a play therapy room. And I want to commend you guys, whoever did the shopping. You did a great job of the things that you got. If you look around, well, first look here. On the top shelf, there are 2 anatomical dolls. In any play, you always want to have anatomical dolls. You say, why do you want to have anatomical dolls? They are other toys after a child who has been sexually abused and has gotten comfortable in their play will go to these dolls. You don't want to ask, did somebody touch you here? You don't want to do that. Let the child, again, tell you their story. If that child does sexual moves with the doll, this is one of the things I want to say also. Working with kids, it will tear at your heart. You will leave a session with a child. Who was it that Janice was with me today? And she asked me after a little boy told us a story about him. She asked me, would I not process some of his past with him? If I were seeing him long term, I would. But because I'm doing brief therapy, and because his history has some deep pain, I don't want to open that up. So that's one of the other things to remember is you may not have a child for as long as like 6 to 8 sessions. You may only see a child for 3 or 4 sessions. If the child has trauma, sexual abuse in their background, they generally will not go to these toys until like about the 8th or 9th session that you have them. If they see them. And I usually have, this bookshelf is a tad bit too high for a play therapy room. You want to have shelves that come up to probably the 2nd or even the 3rd shelf. Because the 3rd shelf, if you've got a 10-year-old or 11-year-old that comes in, is tall enough to see on the 3rd shelf. Anything above that is probably too tall for children that might play, unless they're adolescents. And if you have adolescents that come, you want to have things that they can reach on the top. You don't want to have scissors, paint, crayon, all of that stuff. You don't want to have that on the bottom because kids, little ones, are going to put them in this mouth. They'll drop on this and then put it in your mouth, which is another reason why you want to whistle and you want erasable crayon. But older kids can see on this shelf and above to get things down that they